Hey, everybody. Welcome. We are, Kyle Draper and I are excited for this 6-week series called The Green Book Revival.
Woo!
It's been about a little over 6 months since we published the Green Book, Rethink Everything You Know About Being a Next Gen Loan Officer. And Kyle and I were thinking about, how do we continue to add value and help our industry, especially in the winter that we're approaching. And what better way than to bring together some expert friends who were contributors to the book, also a couple new faces, and kick off this 6-week series that aims to kind of supercharge and boost originators as we enter 2025. And so with that, and we're watching, we may have one additional guest join us. So that's the beauty of live. With that, I'll get us kicked off. Kyle, before I do the round robin intros, anything you want to add as we
well, I think, to be honest with the people, I think they need to know that you actually were like, dude, is it time to write the second Green Book? I was like, did we just write the first one yesterday? We should probably ride this one out a little bit longer. So
good point. Good point.
It took a little bit to get you here, but I'm glad, we did.
Well, we are here, and with us, we've got a star-studded cast, a group of people I'm blessed to call friends. So thank you all for that. And I'm just going to go, let's see here, across the top of the screen. Of course, I'm Brian View, Kyle Draper. Shane Kidwell is joining us today. Hey, Shane.
Hello from gray, damp Seattle.
Oh boy, yeah, just another normal Seattle
we
day.
started our 6 months of hell.
We've got Nathan Nottingham joining as well. Nate,
greetings.
Good to see you.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Elizabeth, I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Jamie Lynch from MBA, and Jamie penned an awesome advocacy chapter for us. And we have a special additional guest from MBA, Rachel Kelly. Rachel is, I'm going to botch this, but basically Rachel is the MBA's Republican House lobbyist. I think I got that right.
Nailed it.
And so when we kick off when we kick this thing off, we're going to start there and just kind of maybe recap, post-election, what it means for mortgage and what MBA is doing. But before we do that, this book was written, was really coordinated by Kyle and I, but written by 37 people who have the biggest of big hearts, were selfless in sharing their expertise with our audience, with our industry. And we lost one of our friends this year, Sue Buswell. I got to know Sue through LinkedIn, engaging with each other's content, having conversations. We would shoot short videos together. And in the short amount of time that I knew her, there was nobody that had a bigger heart and passion for credit and credit education and bringing that to our industry and ultimately to consumers. And we lost Sue, sadly, a few months back. I know it's a shock for all of us. It was super painful. And when Kyle and I were coordinating this session and this first session around education and advocacy, we knew we needed to have somebody step in for Sue because, first of all, she would be extremely irritated with us if we didn't talk about credit on this session. And Elizabeth, a longtime friend of mine, great friend of Sue as well, volunteered to join us. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for stepping in here today.
Brian, thanks so much for having me. And I said I'm not going to cry because Sue is and was a dear friend. I could just tell you one specific story. She was one person I could call and get excited about credit.
Yeah.
For many of you that don't know me, I've been in this industry for over 20 years, met Sue when she was with Factual Data. So it goes back quite a long time. And we would just sit and talk credit. And at the end of the day, it was because we were both passionate about finding solutions for individuals to actually be able to purchase a home. So she is dearly missed, because that is a person I used to call and say, Sue, let's talk about this detailed situation. Let's do it. And she would always, find that excitement with me. So thank you for having me, so we could continue to share the joy of credit and really how it can help consumers.
So let's move into our topics. We had this section of the book, advocacy and education, and I don't know if you all realize, but I don't know, a week and a half ago, maybe a week ago, we had a little election, and obviously there's some impact to housing, with a new administration coming in, and the Mortgage Bankers Association is obviously the renowned industry representative for all of us in mortgage, and was very close to all things, pre-election and now post-election. And we're fortunate to have Rachel Kelly join us. And Rachel, why don't you just kind of give us a view from DC and a view from MBA following the election, and what we can kind of expect to see going forward.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here and chat with y'all, and happy to answer any questions, as you know, Brian. So just to give you kind of a rundown, I know y'all have heard from Jamie before. Jamie runs all our political affairs. We're in the same department. I'm in the legislative affairs. MBA breaks it down into 4 quadrants. So we have the House Republicans, House Democrats, Senate Republican, and Senate Democrats. And then we have our boss, who's over both me and Jamie, also a lobbyist. I just wanted to make sure that, all sides are represented. And I know Jamie will talk about political and how we in that. But yes, we had a very decisive election. As if you all know by now, the Republicans got a trifecta of the White House, the Senate, and the House has now been representatives has been called for Republicans. The former president, now President-elect Donald Trump, won 312 electoral votes and all 7 swing states. So I'm happy to talk about why that happened if anyone's interested. It's sort of political science 101, but and I'm also happy to get into the first 100 days and what we expect, which again doesn't start until January 20th. So just to kind of give you where we are in the Senate, it has swung to the Republicans. So the Democrats, it used to have control, and now starting January 3rd, because the new Congress actually begins before the new president comes in January 3rd, 2025. It will be Republicans have 53 seats, Democrats have 47. Republicans flipped 4 seats. So you've got West Virginia, Montana, Ohio, and then Pennsylvania, even though right now the current senator of Pennsylvania, Bob Casey, has not conceded. We're kind of tracking that. There are about 100,000 outstanding votes, but the AP and some others that obviously very well respected of this have called this race. And others are telling us there's no way to make up the deficit, but obviously we'll let that play out. Again, some people will ask about a recount. We were just talking about that in our meetings. The current Dave McCormick, who won, is actually above the percentage where an automatic recount would have, which I think is why AP and others called the race. So one thing that I'll get into is that Republicans, and I think all new members are having the House and the Senate are having their new member meetings this week. Chuck Schumer is still the majority leader because, as I just said, the 119 doesn't start till January. He originally, a little bit of drama, wasn't going to allow Dave McCormick to come. But then the Arizona race had not been called for the Democrat. And so he actually invited both of them. So everyone is going to be there this week as they kind of go through their new member orientation. So the House, and this again, talk about drama. This is very close. Again, it's going to continue to be close like it is this current 118th Congress. Republicans officially have 216. Democrats have 207 seats. That's out of the 435. That there's 12 that are left to be called. But it really looks like, and this again is going through, I think I went through 3 or 4 different sources. They will have the smallest of margins and the GOP will hold. So at the end of the day, a good day would be 222 seats for Republicans. Worst case scenario would be 219. So again, that's taking into consideration the California seats. For our folks that are in California, there's a lot of provisional ballots. They just take a while to count everything. Alaska, we're waiting on that. That would be a flipped seat. And they have ranked choice voting, which I'm not even going to get into. I don't like that personally. Not an MBA position, just a Rachel Kelly position. But that's a whole other story. And so we're waiting on those votes. Obviously, also Alaska has to bring in their ballots are a little bit different than maybe something, Pennsylvania and Bucks County driving somewhere. You actually have to fly things in. So that just takes a little bit while. As a reminder, 218 seats, it takes a majority. So you're talking, if the Republicans have a heyday, 222, that's really just a 4 seat. So, as a reminder, the current makeup right now is 221 to 212. Again, just that very slim margins. They actually had 2 members of Congress on each side sworn in yesterday to fill out the remainder of their special elections. So again, just to kind of, I know it feels like January of 2022 was a million years ago, but it wasn't. And if anyone remembers, it took 15 votes to get a speaker. So, talk about drama. I mean, the House of Representatives is I think more dramatic than any reality show. So we got Speaker McCarthy. He was then removed 9 months later. And then you have, Speaker Mike Johnson, who I knew who he was because that's my job for MBA, but people were like, what, who? He is a very nice man from Louisiana. It was basically who has the least amount of baggage, and he was the one. So what will be interesting and what is different than him, and he is expected, and I'll go through sort of what's happening, and it's happening today. House Republicans and House and Senate Republicans are voting on their leadership like right now. And so he is very different than a speaker, Kevin McCarthy. He is in lockstep with President Trump. So there's really not any daylight. So that's a little bit different than we maybe saw in President Trump's, 1.0, his first term. So that's going to be interesting. Going back to numbers in the House, where again, this will start January 3rd, but it starts a little bit now because President Trump has nominated 2 current Republican House members, Elise Stefanik of New York, who you all probably know. She's in the current leadership. She's also got rose to fame, kind of calling out some of these Ivy League presidents of colleges for, their, I think people would call it anti-Semitic and the things that were happening on campus. So she has been nominated to UN ambassador, and then Congressman Michael Waltz, from Florida. He would be national security advisor. He does not have to be confirmed by the Senate. She does. She'll get confirmed easily, but I bring that up because unlike Senate, House, you do have to have a special election in almost all states. And that I think that actually goes back to our Constitution, where the people have to elect, which again, it's a timing wise. And when you're saying, say worst case scenario, we're at 219, right? Then you go down to 218. That's just a majority. If you lose someone else and you're only at 219, does that give the Democrats or just a vacancy? So it's a weird place to be. So that's again 2. And the timing starts from when she resigns. The problem is she can't resign now because they need her votes to get through the lame duck, which I can talk about in a second. So, and the timing, I believe in New York, for those folks who live in New York, is 60 to 70 days for a special election. So that's going to be, and just quickly what MBA cares about, what this means for y'all, what this means for our members. Not a lot of changes at the House Republican leadership expected today. Like I mentioned, Speaker Johnson, very close to President Trump. He was actually telling reporters he just came from Mar-a-Lago. He's going back I believe, tonight for planning, and then back to DC because there's votes and things going on. So there's really no daylight between what President Trump is planning in this first in his first 100 days and the House Republicans. So that could help Mike Johnson with the folks who are in that House Freedom Caucus. Anyone's heard about those? Those are sort of the folks, 8 of them removed Speaker McCarthy. One thing to watch that we'll watch for you all that I know that Jamie will be putting out is that as these rules. So if anyone kind of followed what happened last time, Republicans and the Democrats, Republicans have always sort of been freer with that, if I can use that term, create their own rules in their caucus, which governs their caucus. Again, Speaker McCarthy, to get that 15th vote, had to give a lot. And that's why you saw one member could call a motion to vacate. You also saw the House Freedom Caucus getting a lot of sitting on rules committee, sitting on different things. So we'll be watching to see those will be today and tomorrow as they decide those rules. So that will affect, and we'll keep everyone focused how that's gonna impact. So still have Speaker Mike Johnson, Majority Leader Steve Scalise, both those gentlemen from Louisiana, the Majority Whip Tom Emmer, and then Conference Chair was Elise Stefanik. So we will look for that to change. Looking at a Kat Kamik from Florida, or Lisa McClain from Michigan. We have great relationships with both of those. There's also 2 other names in the mix. We'll be interested to see that. One of the things that will be interesting is policy chair. Again, it's something that has had more of an outside role, might not. It's currently Gary Palmer from Alabama, but Kevin Hearn of Oklahoma is challenging him. So, and then the National Republican Congressional Committee, which helps, again, try to save these seats and expand, that will change. House Democrats, not expected to change at all. Their votes actually next week, and they might even push it till after Thanksgiving. But again, the big 3, if anyone remembers, after Nancy Pelosi and Clyburn, and I'm the Maryland gentleman that I'm forgetting his name, Steny Hoyer, when they stepped down, you had this new generation. Hakeem Jeffries will be minority leader, Catherine Clark as minority whip, and Pete Aguilar as Dem caucus chair, which is a really important role. There'll be new leadership at the DCCC, which is the arm to get them elected, and then policy and caucuses. And the caucuses, I will think, we'll want to pay attention to. That's the ones that are like the progressive side, which, as you all know, took kind of a beating. And so that'll be interesting to see who they kind of replace with that, and how much impact they really have. I think the New Dems and the Blue Dogs, I think you're going to see a lot more power from them. It seems like the American people have kind of spoken resoundingly. It was some of the folks that won the seats. That the Dems did fill up seats, and these seem to be Democrats more in the middle. And then you have the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus, which those are very powerful caucuses as well. So we'll see new leadership at that. One of the things we'll be paying attention, and we'll keep you all posted. I know Jamie will talk about, we're having a post-election webinar. Will be December 2nd is when you'll see committee chairmen and ranking members, but a lot of the ranking, which again is the Democrats, will stay the same. And that's where I think we could see Donald Trump play a role. So specifically for MBAs are all the bills that we care about, and the issues come out of the House Financial Services Committee. That is being vacated by Patrick McHenry, who's retiring. And so we're looking at the top 2 frontrunners are Congressman Andy Barr of Kentucky, Congressman French Hill of Arkansas. We have great relationship with both those gentlemen. And they are very similar in some of what they're going to want to do, which will be really interesting, and kind of what their priorities are. Especially both of them in the last 6 weeks or so talked about GSE reform. So again, now that's one of the things with, with the Trump administration versus what would have been a Harris. Obviously, Harris administration had no appetite for that. So where does the Trump administration land with that? Don't think it's in the first 100 days, so we can all be okay about that, because they got plenty to tackle. And then Ways and Means, again, MBA is, as I like to say, and Jamie's heard me say it a million times, taxes, taxes, taxes. Trump's taxes are expiring. They were passed in 2017.
Armageddon.
They expire December 2025. So these are a lot of things that affect a lot of our members. That chairman's going to be Jason Smith of Missouri, ranking member Richie Neal of Massachusetts. And just to give a quick, I know I'm probably talking too long, so I'll turn it back to Brian, but some of the things we're fighting on, we're actually going to put some of these out for you all as well. MBA is looking at sort of two buckets, defense and offense. You know, and I say defense because a lot of them can be used as pay-fors. It will be interesting, and I was saying this in a meeting the other day, how this populist movement, as we saw with you know, President Donald Trump getting elected by sort of this speaking to the everyday person, right? And how is that going to affect how these new Trump members of Congress, and I say that not meaning they're Trump, but meaning they're elected in this time of Trump, meaning they're elected under what people care about, which is what's affecting my wallet and what's the safety of me and my family. That's basically what people voted on. And so how did that affect? And again, we're having 55-ish, I think it's 55-ish new members, Dems and Republicans come in. So how do those that are the Republicans coming in, how do they work with that? Do they care as much about having pay-fors? And that's something we're not going to know if we see that yet until they start getting the nitty gritty. Are they going to be more of the traditional kind of, you've seen those Republicans, you know, that are going to say this has got to be paid for. And so for us on the MBA side, it's like, okay, what are they going to go after? We're going to be involved in coalitions protecting 199A as a pass through. I know a lot of folks on here, if they have their own companies or they're a part of companies, we obviously care about the corporate rate, but we're aware that a lot of MBA's members are taxed at 199A, and you're talking a minimum of 20% raise. And I think that's a lower end if that went away. Again, that is due to go away December 25th. So you know, not this time, but the next time you file your taxes, that would be a big gouge to a lot of folks. So that's a bigger issue. There's a lot of folks that are, a lot of Republicans that are very, that want to keep that. And so we feel good about that. There's a lot of the personal deductions, the mortgage interest deduction, which I know with some of the things that were included in this, it's not as big a deal, but I know it's still a big deal to a lot of individuals. Gain on sale, I know that's a big one. SALT for some of our folks that live kind of in those areas. So that's a big one. You know, President Trump has made some promises. So again, it's how do these Republicans weigh that and how do they do that? And then again, there's a few other mortgage servicing rights. We feel like we're definitely going to have to play kind of offense and defense on that, because that's not a big coalition group. That is a MBA issue that we have to be involved versus some of these other ones. And then on our commercial multifamily side, which I won't get into, we have quite a few of those as well. So it's kind of we're figuring out the pieces. Minimum book tax, I think it might affect some folks here. So things like that we're figuring out how to play offense and defense. Who the champions are, that's another thing. On the Senate side, and I just want to quickly go over that, is that there's a lot of turnover on the two committees we care about on the Senate, the banking and the finance. Again, because the Republicans are taking that, you're going to see obviously a flip. So you'll see Mike Crapo. He will now be the chairman. He's been on the committee for a long time. Ron Wyden. He will be moved to ranking. So the two of them are very familiar with each other, but a lot of the members on the committee, because you had so many retirements or folks lose, you're going to see a lot of that changing. And then again, banking will now be Tim Scott, who's great. We have a great relationship with him. He was ranking. He just put out his road to housing plan, which we're supportive of. There's a lot of great things in there, which we can talk about. And then the interesting thing, and everybody hold your breath, but it might be Elizabeth Warren may be the ranking member. She hasn't been super great to our industry, but again, she's also, it seems like in the past couple of years, been open to dialogue and some conversation on things. And again, some of the things that we might be able to work with her on, and some other issues are, we're going to call it not necessarily affordable housing, which it is, but supply. Really pushing that supply, which will also be in the tax bill. Your LIHTC, your MyTech, your downtown revitalization, your neighborhood homes investment act. So there's quite a few things that we hope to work on. And then I'll round it out with the Senate is voting, the Senate Republicans are voting today. This will be the one to watch. Again, reality show. It is a secret ballot, but there's a big social media push. Anyone say Elon Musk, to get Rick Scott of Florida to be the Republican, be the majority leader. It's secret ballot. I don't think that happens. I don't think he wins. It's people in town think it's John Thune of South Dakota to lose, maybe going to second ballot between him and Senator Cornyn of Texas. And then, so we'll watch that today. That's something interesting. Again, Trump has not put his finger on the scale. I mean, as of when I got on this. So we'll see what happens. But Senator John Barrasso, Wyoming, will be the Republican whip. And then Senator Tim Scott, who'll be a very busy man, will be the chair of the NRSC, the Senate committee. And then the Democrats, everything's really staying the same with Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin, and again, lots of members on the committees. So my colleague will be very busy in the coming months getting to know all the new members on the Senate committees. So I will stop there. Happy to talk about his first 100 days. There's a lot going on. This is going to be a wild time between now and December 20th, which we're calling the lame duck period. They have to fund the government. And then there's also our Stopping Abusive Trigger Leads bill, which we really care about, which may still have a chance. And then again, whenever they get out, if they do fund the government, if they do fund the government, and then again, it will start over again on January 3rd. Everyone's sworn in, and that's the 119th, which means anything we didn't get passed, we will actually have to reintroduce in the 119th. So now I will be quiet and happy to answer any questions.
Rachel, thank you so much. That was like a full year's worth of a civics course in 27 minutes. You covered a ton of ground, and we appreciate.
Do we get college credit for that?
We should.
I feel like we should.
I've been doing this for 22 years. I can nerd out all day long on this. So,
I think
the fact that you remember all those names is pretty impressive, right?
For
maybe
the audience,
I've been here too long. Maybe that's the question.
There's a few names that I think I remember when I was, when I didn't have gray hair. For the audience, it's so important for loan officers and people that are, those of us in the industry that are facing off with consumers to really understand, how DC impacts housing and housing finance. And so, I can't say enough the value that the Mortgage Bankers Association brings to our industry. Jamie, Rachel, thank you so much for all you do. Of course, thank you for being part of this book. And I'm planning on bringing you back, Rachel, because I think it would be fascinating to recap, somewhere in the middle of the first 100 days. But
I guess that's where I can kind of make my plug, Brian. Rachel mentioned our post-election webinar that the Mortgage Action Alliance is hosting, which will include Rachel along with her colleagues and members of our policy team to go over just like the legislative, kind of an outline of the legislative priorities and a look ahead to what will change on the regulatory side. There's a lot of things, like Rachel said, that are up in the air, but we do know that there's changes coming to CFPB, FHFA, HUD, and kind of how that impacts the industry. And so, while what Rachel does on a daily basis is super important and one of the most important political strategies that we have, one of the easiest ways that everybody watching this live stream can get involved is by joining the Mortgage Action Alliance, which is MBA's free grassroots advocacy network. And if you do attend this webinar on December 4th from 3 to 4, you will automatically join the Mortgage Action Alliance, and just really stay engaged on advocacy. And, when there's breaking news, we just sent when the control of Congress, that'll go out. When there's calls to action, that's on the federal or state level, that we want you to send direct messages to your elected officials. MA is a tool for you to be able to use. And then, of course, our quarterly newsletters, and then part of our MA webinar series, which is that December 4th briefing. Another easy way for you to be the lobbyist for a day and really advocate for your industry is to attend the National Advocacy Conference, or what we call NAC, and that is located in Washington, D.C. on an annual basis. This coming year, it's April 8th and 9th. It's really a 2-day conference. We give you all the tools on the first day to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident to go to Capitol Hill the next day, where you will be meeting face-to-face with your elected officials and their legislative staff. And again, it's really a great opportunity for all industry professionals, whether you're on the C-suite level, whether you're a young professional just starting out, whether you're a general counsel or you're a loan officer, or you're, associate member that's part of a law firm or a tech company. It's really for all our members to feel like their issues are heard, and what's most important to their business. Rachel mentions Tax-mageddon, GSE reform, housing supply, Nathan, keeping veterans in their homes, all of those things. AI will definitely be talked about. That's something that's going to be part of our issues briefing, because I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to talk about that on the Hill, although there's not really a legislative stand on that right now. But, working through all those details and kind of what that means for our members. And then the last leg of the advocacy that I'll just mention is MORPAC, which is MBA's Federal Political Action Committee. And, Rachel's able to do her job in a way that is benefits our members, because MORPAC is able to provide that access, not only for her, but also our members to be able to, again, get front and center, build those relationships with these federal elected officials. And also, just to give you perspective, this past cycle, we actually raised $1 million less than we did last cycle, due to just market conditions and, mergers and acquisitions. But we were able to spend just as much as we raised, which is an incredible feat, and something that we really do value, because it is an important leg in our advocacy arsenal. And so thank you to, all of our supporters for MBA's advocacy programs. And we really do enjoy what we do on a daily basis. And it's fun to get to know all of the members and even the state leaders, and continuing to keep them engaged on, again, the federal and state levels.
Love it. Thank you guys so much. I dropped 2 links in the comments, one to to join MA, the Mortgage Action Alliance, if you haven't already.
Thank you.
And the other to the December 4th webinar, which I will be registering for as well. Jamie, Rachel, thank you guys so much. Appreciate all you do for us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right, let's shift gears now and have a little bit of an open kind of discussion. As Kyle and I pulled these sessions together, again, the idea was to set loan officers up over the next 6 to 8 weeks with actionable, educational insight that we all can then take to consumers and use these next 6 to 8 weeks to start building on the momentum of 2024, so that when we hit 2025, we're off and running. And so, I just kind of throw it out there for the group. As we put ourselves, and I guess as I look at the board here, there's 2 originators, right? For sure here. Maybe Shane, let's put you on the spot a little bit. And as you think about the originators in your business, as well as those that you coach, what are you advising loan officers be doing for the next, month and a half as the year ends to get prepped for 2025 and be successful?
Yeah. Number one, don't take this season off. We're coming out of arguably the most challenging time in our industry. And I think going into arguably one of the most exciting times in our industry. And you can't afford to start 2025 in 2025. And so that doesn't mean you're working on Christmas and you have no balance, but a lot of people mentally check out and they start to kind of coast, and they'll get their CE done and watch Nathan for hours on end, and they'll do these other housekeeping items. You'll be impressed how clean their desk is. And yet their database does not get nurtured. They're not prepping. They're not building out the systems and the tools to really lean in for 2025. And those that are winning are already winning the game before it's even started. And so like Kyle and I, we've been talking about this. We have a webinar today. And we've kind of coined it paying cash for Christmas. You know, a lot of people go into Christmas and the holidays and they put everything on their cards because they haven't built up the currency in their business to really be truly successful. And so I think that first and foremost, don't quit mentally right now. Don't quit at all, but certainly don't take this season off. The second component to that, and we just went through I was a poli-sci major in college. And so I love this conversation, but most originators sit back and they go, I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do with that. Right. I will tell you, and Kyle and others can agree or disagree. I believe that going into 2025 and probably already here, there's an exchange that takes place between consumers and their loan officer. There's an exchange that takes place between a real estate agent, a referral partner, and their loan officer. And I believe that is like a currency. We exchange something. I watch CE with Nathan. I get coached by Kyle, and I'm getting something in return, and I'm giving something. Knowledge is the new currency. Education is the currency. That's how you're going to win. And I believe there's 4 forms of that you have to master. And you have the time now to do that for 2025. Long form, pre-recorded, short form, pre-recorded, live in person, and live online. Right. And so you look at how people are educating on social media. How do you show up on social media, which is really just a form of digital relationships? How do you show up in person? How are you building and nurturing referral partners? Well, you're not going to go to them and say, hey, I want to grab coffee and just find out how your life is. Or, hey, I wanted to grab coffee and tell you about my loan programs. No one cares. What I'm going to be doing and what I'm going to be encouraging people to do is creating education and meeting the audience where they need to be met. And for a consumer, it's, hey, I want to educate you on the new programs that the new administration is going to be opening up in 2025 to help you have more home affordability. Hey, I want to educate you on what the markets are going to be doing and how they're going to be pivoting, when the right time to refinance is. How are these initiatives going to impact veterans and other communities? It's going to real estate agents and saying, hey, like understanding your audience is knowing that real estate agents are suffering as much as loan officers have been. And so helping them generate business, helping them do that through lead generation tactics, whether they actually implement it or not, is irrelevant from exchanging that knowledge currency. And so I think that as I'm sitting here, I'm more excited because I'm looking at, you know, as Rachel said, it was a clean sweep, and that gives more clarity. That is going to allow more things to probably get done and have a little bit more momentum. And for that, I'm excited. So again, don't take this season off. Be thinking about ways that you can exchange that currency compliantly, right? And by exchange and by sharing knowledge, there's just so many opportunities. And then you think all the technology and the ways you can do that. Oh my gosh, AI, online, through social media, through video. There's just so many ways you can do that.
Love that, Shane. Appreciate that, man. Good segue, Elizabeth, into what you're working on. You know, as I think about, again, putting myself in the shoes of a loan officer in mid-November, knowing what a lot of consumers are going to be going through because they probably aren't going to be paying cash for Christmas. This is a perfect segue into, you know, the importance of credit, maintaining credit, and being a student ourselves of credit. Elizabeth, just kind of share your perspective on.
Yeah, you know, I just wanted to add, Shane, I love what you're saying about education because I've been in this industry for over 20 years. And I myself was a loan officer broker, right? And so I wrote loans, and finding those clients, it is now all about education because it makes it even, I think, more challenging for loan officers because there's YouTube, there's social media. Everyone is hearing something about some situation and they're not hearing the accurate information, right? So it's interesting because I watch these YouTube videos or I watch these other sections and people are coming out being experts, but I would also add, check your source because expertise, I mean, we all say what, you have to have 10,000 hours plus to have that expertise. And that's where even credit plays a role. And if you are sharing, because credit is an important guideline for someone to be able to qualify, if you are sharing information, just make sure to check your source, right? Because there's so much, and I'm focused just on credit right now. There's so much false information, and AI is such a great tool, but if it's pulling in that false information to give you that content, then you're again not sharing the right information to the consumers and falling into that trap. And that's one of the things that I've been focusing on now in my life is really bringing in experts to talk about this, right? And for credit purposes, just so everyone is aware, credit is changing in 2025. Vantage scores are going to be implemented in the process. And if you're not starting to make yourself aware of what that means, then you're falling behind, because it's happening. I know from the counseling world, because now I deal with a lot of HUD counselors, I'm involved with HUD directly. It is all about trended data and what that means and how is that impacting your customers. And one thing I could share with you today is that trended data, both for Vantage and for FICO, is going to have a huge impact on your customers, especially for their utilization, right? So for all of us, we know FICO is made up of 5 different factors, right? One of the biggest factors real fast is utilization. Is the 30% of your credit score, meaning how much credit do you have available versus how much is being used. That is not going to be the same rule with trended data. So your spending behavior and the way you actually are utilizing your credit is going to be very different with the new scoring models that are going to be used in 2025. So it's again, keeping people aware. If you have a huge database, I mean, sending this information out, because if people are used to, hey, I use $10,000, I pay off my bill every single month, or I pay it off 3 months from now, that behavior is going to have a huge impact on your score. You no longer can tell a client to go pay their bill and then see a 30 to 40 point increase with the new trended data. So I stress to what Shane just said, education is key, especially now with 2025, the credit scoring models are changing, trended data is being implemented. Even looking at the credit report, if you haven't seen a trended data report yet, then talk to me, talk to one of our HUD counselors. They will start educating you on that, because it is in full swing at this point.
Yeah, I knew that was coming down the pipe, but until you just explained that to me, the light bulb didn't go off. Those are multiple content pieces that loan officers can be creating and educating their database and communities on, because that's a huge change in modeling and then behavior.
Yes. Yes.
Massive.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So Nathan, you kind of sit in this spot where you actually sit on a bunch of different chairs, which is interesting as it relates to our business, right? You spend parts of your day overseeing the training of loan officers from a continuing education perspective. You spend parts of your day, in the mortgage business per se, the mortgage business proper, facing off with consumers and originators, and then another part of your day, which is near and dear to my heart, is in how you all serve our veterans through the vetted VA community. So I know education and advocacy is like in your DNA. As we kind of, wrap up 2024, what are the things your teams are working on to better prepare all the originators that you encounter for 2025 and better serving our veterans?
Well, I appreciate the question like that, because Shane, it's funny, I wrote down on my sticky notes, I was like, invest your education investment, right? Respect the investment that people are going to give you with their time. And I think that one thing that right now I'm learning so much more and appreciating more is that social media scrolls, everybody will teach you. Kyle does a great job telling you to get on video, get your content out there. Shane is a great coach in this, but Rachel, it totally did not miss me that you're like, yeah, I'm watching X for the next update, right? Our lobbyist, our legal, everything is on social media impact. And so what we have to respect in this component is teaching. And Shane is 100% right. use the next 6 to 8 weeks to engage in Chat GPT and develop your next quarter of content in the next 6 weeks, because you can pre-record. And here's a fun thing. I believe in Back to the Future. I know we missed it. We missed the mark. We didn't have floating skateboards, right? And so I'm really let down by that. But right now, I would encourage all of you all to start your education process for Q1 this week. Use ChatGPT for talking points. Please do not script out of ChatGPT, just talking points. And then put those points up on a whiteboard and start talking to them and record what it is. And what you start developing, and you can say, hey, it's November 13th of 2024, and I'm talking to you February of 2025, and here's why. Here's what I think is going to happen. Like, how cool would it be to teach something? And by the way, it doesn't change. Like, here's the truth about mortgage today, and it's going to be the same when I post this in February of 2025. Like, I'm just saying this is an ideation, okay? So you can take that for what it's worth. But what we do is human-centric. People want to know, and as much as we repeat it, they haven't heard it, or they need to hear it again, because data comes so fast, and we forget, and we pick up a little piece every single time, and we keep getting a little piece here and a little piece there. So one thing we've done in the mortgage company, we put all of our loan officers on a 30-day challenge, 30 days of video content, and they can all win a spiff, like, as a little Christmas bonus. We're like, look, we'll give you a little Christmas bonus if you do 30 days of video content. And it's so much fun. It's competitive. And we're getting past the I'm scared to record this. But the other part of that too is it's not a sales pitch. Go back to the great books like Story Brand. Go listen to Kyle. Go listen to Shane. Go listen to these people who are like, look, your consumer is the hero. You're the Obi-Wan. Start acting that way. You need to know this to defeat the enemy, the lack of home ownership, or overcome whatever it is going to be. So engage in that, teach it. You know, I found a weird niche. I love to teach law and the boring stuff and try to make it exciting. Go figure. But I'll tell you this, if I can do it and sit down for 40 hours a year and put myself on camera teaching like RESPA and ECOA and compliance and state laws, and you all buy it from me, I promise you can talk about mortgage and people want to hear it.
Love that.
Brian, can I just add one more thing? I think what this election proved to me as a marketer is traditional forms of media are no longer the primary forms of media. I got all of my news updates on the election from X. And a lot of what was most impactful to me was a guy or a gal saying, I'm standing in line, ready to vote. And this is what I just saw. I'm in North Carolina, and this is the damage to the highways. It's real time. And so this allows us all to become subject matter experts, celebrities online, from an educational perspective. And you don't have to go to MSNBC or CNN or Fox News to get education anymore. We have this opportunity for free advertising online. We just need to take advantage of it. And nobody cares how you look or how you sound. It's what you say and the knowledge and the experience behind it.
Well, and if I can jump on that real quick, when you look at this election, I saw this guy break this down the other day on Instagram, and I was like, oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought about it, but how true is it? You know, Kamala Harris did a great job getting these A-list celebrities to endorse her. And in the presidencies of the past, that was a great formula to ultimately win the election. What you watch Donald Trump do was go on Joe Rogan's podcast, go on Jake Paul's podcasts, and love them or hate them, their reach is infinite compared to the verbal endorsement of a candidate. And so it was really powerful to watch, regardless of what side of the decision you were on, to watch social media truly, in my opinion, play a difference. It's powerful, and it shows us that people are paying attention. And what's wild is Donald Trump didn't have to pay anybody anything.
Yeah,
to go be on those.
And I think
it's the old media. I mean, I think you just hit the nail on the head, Kyle. It's the new media, the podcasts, the individuals doing it, the TikTokers. I mean, I think I wouldn't say this midterm, but I think by 2028, you're going to see a flip of, you're not going to see TV ads as much. You're going to see more targeted ads, whether it's the, going to our Generation X and boomers on Facebook, or going to Instagram, going to all the Twitch and all the other things, which I probably don't even know about, you're going to see the money flip to that versus, to your point, I mean, and it was a play. It was a huge play that Donald Trump's staff made to go to the 18 to 25-year-old men who don't vote, who are low propensity, and try to turn them out versus going to, I mean, I'll be honest, the women my age, who it would have taken a lot more to flip them to him because they probably weren't going to vote for him. So it's fascinating, but I agree with you. I think to what they were saying is like education, you all doing it is so powerful versus like someone famous. I think it's more powerful to have you all making that pitch.
And I think I think it goes to what Nathan was saying too, about, tell them what you told them and tell them again and all of that. And then ultimately do, right? And I think we could bring that to the industry as well when we're talking about housing affordability, housing supply. Like, we talk about these things, but, as Shane mentioned too, put it in your plans and let's do. And again, starting with joining MA is like the easiest way for you to get involved and joining, your legislative fly-ins like Shane, Kyle, I think you went to the brokers one last year, hoping you can join National Advocacy Conference this year, but at least you're getting different perspectives and you're still getting that experience to come to Capitol Hill and again, be the lobbyist for the industry. So it's super important. And again, easiest way to get involved.
I'm a big proponent of the local loan originator, and I say local because the reality is most loan officers do most of their loan officer work over the phone, over a Zoom, but they're hyper local, by nature. And so, like, just for those of you that participated on this webinar, the things that you've learned, especially from Rachel in the opening, turning that into content for your local community, for your local market, for the referral partners you serve and the consumers that they serve and you serve together. Nobody else is doing that. Those are opportunities to show up. And I've learned from Kyle, over the last couple of years that it relates to the content that we create and put out there. I do a lot on LinkedIn. I'm saying the same thing probably 10 times a week, but sometimes I'm saying it in writing. Sometimes I'm saying it on video. And I know people aren't seeing it because it's different people that are engaging with the same message. And so you don't be afraid to say the same thing over and over again. Make sure it's good and right and accurate, but you don't know when someone's going to consume a piece of your content, where they are in their life journey, and when that content's going to resonate with them. And so be expert, be known, and be consistent, and most importantly, show up. Kyle, we've got about 5 minutes left. We've never quieted Kyle Draper down for this long in one of these sessions.
This whole call has been so over my head. I'm just trying to not look like a moron. So,
but as a coach and as a social media coach, you just took in a ton of information. How would you kind of echo it back to your students on how to leverage and use this type of information to their advantage?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to do is we have to show up with a desire to serve, not to sell. Because when we desire to sell, we automatically create the outcome we desire. And so if I do a video, if I put out content and I don't get a lead, I don't get a direct buy, well, then now my data says that, well, that video must have sucked and I obviously should just not do that anymore. Nobody cares. But when my desire is to show up and serve, because whether the NBA puts it out or NAR puts it out on the real estate side, the data always says that the average home buyer thinks they need 20% down to buy a home, which is screaming our industry, again, not the MBAs of the world, but the local loan officer does a freaking crappy job of educating homeowners, right? A horrible job when as a nation, people still think they need 20% down. And it comes down to me, it's selling, not serving. So we've got to come to the serve side which then allows like people like you, Brian, that, you know, you put a post up the other day about like, man, you're showing up in my feed everywhere. Like, how did you do it? And your post was like, well, 16 years ago, I started doing this thing called LinkedIn. And for the last 3 years, I've been so intentional. And so you decided there's a void in the industry. There's a gap. People need to understand stuff. And so you showed up every day with a desire to help them understand. And because it wasn't directly related back to, well, like what was our revenue this quarter at FinLocker? Right. We can't connect the dots that way. And so everybody out there that's like, this is stupid, it's because you're using the data in a poor way to decide if it's effective or not. Just keep going because it works. And the other simple thing I want to say is, you know, all of us probably have tens of thousands of loan officers in our database that we email to. It is mind-blowing how many direct response emails I get that says I'm out of the office.
Yes.
And I'm like, I bet all the loan officers with out of office replies turned on are the same ones that are going to use their credit cards for Christmas gifts in the next 6 weeks. And so what are we doing, guys? Show up, be available. And it's amazing what happens when we just commit to the basics. I have it written down on my baseball, right? Just do the basics. Stop overthinking this. And it'll result in winning in 2025.
Love that. Guys, we got a few minutes left. Anybody have any closing thoughts you want to share before we round out session 1 of the Green Book Revival?
Well, I can just add what, Coach Kyle said. Those that are not in the office will probably be charging their credit card, and their credit score will take a huge dip still. I mean, I'm just saying it will take a dip because it is the second largest factor. So if you are thinking about that, just be aware that, if you're doing anything exciting in January, like purchasing a home, don't use your credit cards.
Right on. Rachel, Jamie, anything for the group before we wrap here today?
I would just echo Jamie and say, again, we work really well with the Brokers Coalition, BAC. Those are obviously the Stopping Abusive Trigger Leads has been our number one. Come to our fly-in, come to theirs. I think they actually do a breakfast during ours, Jamie. There's 55, maybe with the senators, 60 new members of Congress. That's probably one of yours. That's probably your senator. You need to get to know them. You need to talk to them. They really care about what's going on. As you saw, housing was a huge issue for both presidential elections, which is not to say the first time, but we really need to capitalize on this. Whether it's taxes, including housing supply, whether veterans issues, which I didn't even get into. And I know Nathan and I could talk about that for days. We really need your voice on the Hill to tell these elected officials what we need to make our industry stronger. And I just say, please sign up for ours. We can work with you all on costs and all of that, or the Broker Coalition. They're fantastic. Just come to one of them and tell these members who you are and what we stand for.
I would even take it a step further. I sit on the board of the BAC. I sit on the board of the Michigan Mortgage Lenders Association as well. Each state association has their own, advocacy effort. And so, sometimes it's not as easy from a time and economics perspective to get to DC. Everybody, we're all in our communities, and there's something happening in every community around advocacy. And not to make this a, social media play, but how powerful would it be as a loan officer to have, your picture with one or more of your state representatives in your capital city, and the message to your community is, I'm here representing you in your home ownership, desires, needs, whatever. I mean, there's a way to flip it so that it benefits you as well. So it's like, doing good by doing good. Nathan, I know you're about to jump on a plane. Closing thoughts from your seat.
You know, we talked about educating and using that as an outreach point, but I'm going to say be super curious, right? The MBA's, CMA, it- the structure, everything that makes up the mortgage, there's a ton of steps in every component of the mortgage, from production and sales to underwriting to the secondary market. I've not met one person in this industry that knows it all. They're aware of much of it. So find one part you don't feel like an expert in and just dive in. Look at the MBA, look at what they can train you on, look at training outside of just the standard. And I would say make 2025 something where you're going to say, look, I don't understand this part of my business. I'm going to dig in. I want to figure out what's going on there and just make that one of those weird interpersonal goals, because what you'll find or could find there is you find something you're passionate about, it becomes a niche and it becomes your thing. You start teaching back. And you learn something, start teaching it. It helps it resonate better. And when that happens, all of a sudden you may find that like you're the only person who's talking about this and people are like, ooh, that's really interesting. I want to know more about that. So be curious,
Right.
always be curious.
You just made my baseball. It's good, bro.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Session 1 of the Green Book Revival is in the books, as they say. If you're watching this on repeat, I did put somewhere in the thread a link to register for the next 5 sessions. And I think the next one's next week. So it's fast and furious. We're coming at you with the Green Book Revival. Jamie, Elizabeth, Rachel, Nathan, Kyle, as always, thank you all so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
you guys.
Brian. Thank you, Kyle, for having us on today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everybody, for joining.